I will first conduct a gross anatomical examination of the sheep brain from the dorsal perspective. Located with the cerebrum, so just the cerebrum of the sheep brain, we have the four different lobes. The first lobe that I'll be talking about is the occipital lobe, which is posterior of the brain, and it receives and interprets visual sensory messages. The second lobe that I'll be talking about is the temporal lobe, which is lateral of the brain, so it's towards the sides of the brain. The temporal lobe is involved in hearing and smell. So a better visual of the temporal lobe is on the lateral perspective of the brain. So this darker groove that we see right here is called the lateral sulcus, and it actually divides the temporal lobe from the parietal lobe, which is the third lobe of the brain that I'll be talking about. The parietal cortex is medial of the brain, and it handles all the sensory information except for hearing, vision, and smell. The fourth lobe of the sheep brain is the frontal lobe, which is anterior of the brain. The frontal lobe is also involved in smell, plus it handles a lot of motor function. Also on the dorsal view of the brain, we see this midline right here, which divides the cerebrum into two cerebral hemispheres, and this midline is known as the longitudinal fissure, right down here. So I've already mentioned the lateral sulci, but I'll go ahead and talk about it again. So this line right here, this darker groove, is known as the lateral sulci, and again it divides the temporal lobe from the parietal lobe. These grooves separate, again, the temporal and the parietal lobe, and the grooves they actually create what's called the gyrus. So the gyri are these ridges that are created from the sulci. So this white area right here between the sulci is known as a gyrus. And together the sulci and the gyri make up the total surface area of the brain. So also on the dorsal side of the brain, we can see the cerebellum. And on the ventral side of the brain, we have the medulla. And the medulla, right above the medulla, superior to the medulla, we have the pons. Together, the pons, the medulla, and the cerebellum make up the brainstem.